Oh, so Rick, why don't you come up? And Mr. Quigley, we're going to want to talk to you, I'm sure. Question and answers. This, of course, is a good time if you got to go. It's about 20 after. I want to thank you for being here tonight. Really a historic event. And so I'm not sure how we're going to answer any questions in terms of microphones, or maybe
If you all just raise your hand, we have 2 wireless microphones, so go ahead and raise your hand, and somebody will come over to you.
Okay, so Billy is saying just raise your hand if you have a question, and we have 2 mics, and one can be brought to you. So I'm going to leave that up to the people with the microphones.
Susan.
Hi, my name is Susan Edwards, and I have a question. How large do you anticipate the statue to be?
So, well, I don't have to repeat the question because I have the microphone. So what I advised initially, and I still feel this is appropriate, is the statue needs to be larger than life, not life-size. The problem with bronze life-size statues is that they look diminutive outside. They look smaller than you. The Ash Monument at 12 feet, people mistaken for being life-size. And of course, it's also 15 feet off the ground. But so what we're imagining is about a 7-foot figure for the size of the statue. And Rick works in wax, as I mentioned, and it just has an elegant finish. So Florentine finish is what his style is. It's slightly different from mine, but we have the same attention to detail, and I just have to call it humanity and individualism, trying to make it not look like a generic statue. Okay. Do we have?
Who are you going to model the statue from? What person? Or are you going to use a generic person or a picture that you've already found, or somebody here in Franklin County you're going to model the statue from?
Right. So who is the model? And that's a good question. Because it's an anonymous person by discussion of 70 troops, there are 70 people. It's important, however, to pick somebody, a person, and sometimes several people. So for Arthur Ashe, for example, the 4 children represent his daughter, Camera Ashe, is one little girl. Another little girl is my daughter. Another little boy is Demario, who lived in my neighborhood and came to my studio every day after school. And the 4th child is my other daughter posing as a little boy with a baseball cap on. And what I want to say, the reason I'm glad you asked that question is people tell me, I've heard people say, you know, I'm really glad that you put a Chinese person, an Indian person, a white person, and a black person represented by those children. So guess what? The statue is going to look like a person who is a black person.
That's good.
Just like American history and black history are the same. It's American history. But that's what it's going to look like.
Okay, thank you.
So do you have any renderings of what it might possibly look at this stage, or is it just too early?
I got it. It's a question, do we have any renderings yet of what the statue will look like? The reason we're here, Rick and I are here, and Devon and Patrick are here, are to look at the sites. The site does inform the sculpture, what the posture is going to be, how high it's going to be, the pose of the sculpture. So that will be forthcoming. And the site, of course, is very important. Is first on the list. Was there another one?
Will it be one figure or multiple, one figure?
So the question is it just one figure? And you didn't say just. Is it one figure? The plan is for one figure, and one figure's enough. One figure's enough. Our goal is to make it something that people are going to cry in front of. But people aren't going to notice it much. But I mentioned this earlier, Rick and I were talking about putting it in a downtown site. And the thing about a downtown site is it humanizes the urban environment. People will sit by it to have lunch. Feels good. It's like going in a museum and enjoying being in a museum. What is it about? Most people won't read, eventually, won't read the inscriptions. I mean, if you think about it, statues you've seen, how many inscriptions do you read? But unless you're connected to it in some way, which of course everybody in this room is right now. One way or the other, you're connected because you think it shouldn't be here, or connected because you think it should. But the capital, the cultural capital I'm talking about, is a value that is owned by Rocky Mount. It's claimed by Rocky Mount. It's owned by Franklin County as history. His history tells us now. We didn't know that. But if it's claimed by Rocky Mount, you own it. And if you don't claim it and you don't do best by it in terms of what it can do for the city, it's just a past opportunity if we can't live with it, live around it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get carried away.
My question was similar. I was going to ask if it was going to be one person, but since Franklin County had men who were sailors as well as soldiers, I was wondering if it could be two images.
I would like to pass that to Dr. Quigley, but I don't think I can. It's budgetary. It really is budgetary. Richmond had a soldier and sailors monument. It's something to think about. But as far as the visage, as far as putting a person in a uniform, it's something to research and something to think about. But I don't know if any of the 70 are sailors. Do you know that?
Only one.
So there was one sailor. We got to work on that. We got to work on the verbiage. Yeah.
When you create this process of, are you going to approach it as over here to your left, approach it as a memorial or as a monument or both, or is it just semantics?
Well, it is a memorial. It is a memorial. Somebody said when the statues were coming down on Monument Avenue, and by the way, I was hired to advise on taking those statues down so that the statues were protected in the process of transporting them, taking them down, transporting them, and storing them. Once you take a statue off its pedestal, it's a statue, it's a sculpture. A memorial is different because of the intent, and it is semantics, perhaps, in terms of what you see. But I think I think it's treated differently. I treat them differently. There's a reverence involved in how the presentation is done. And I can't tell you what that's going to be yet. We need the proper site, frankly. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for coming down here to talk with all of us and share your expertise with us. My question is twofold. I really enjoyed the pictures that Dr. Quigley put up there with the soldiers, but there was one person that was in charge, kind of a protector, like you said, King Neptune. I like the idea that we have a protector to protect the history that we have now learned and to keep for generations to come. I like the idea of a single soldier, not unlike the tomb of the unknown soldier, out there protecting what we do not know. So I think it should go along that line of being not only a symbol for us to celebrate, but also to protect what we have. With that said, it has to get paid. You had a smaller project, you had listed it up there, of smaller copies that I know you sold for fundraising. Is this a project where you see that might be available?
I think your question, to boil that down, is it possible to sell small statues to add to the fundraising? Is that the question?
I know you did that with King Neptune.
Right. We've done that in the past. The beauty of this project is that it starts out with a budget from the Mellon Foundation, and it has a deadline, as I believe that's correct. So, and the deadline will need to be met under the scrutiny of the foundation, of the Mellon Foundation. It doesn't mean we couldn't do small, that Rick and or I could do smaller ones for sale to raise money for another statue of a different, in a different or same direction. But anyway, the answer to your question is we're working with what we got at this point. Okay.
I have a question for Dr. Quigley.
Thanks, Tyler. I grew up in Virginia Beach, and the Neptune is part of our identity now. I grew up seeing it built and see it now in the marketing, and when you hear about Virginia Beach, it is synonymous with King Neptune statue. It did a lot for tourism and a lot for giving Virginia Beach an identity through art. Can you elaborate more on your experience of how your work has created an identity for a community, created tourism, created ways to put together a message for the community that is seen outside that community?
You mean as related to Neptune?
This statue here, what it can do for Rocky Mount, for Franklin
Neptune
County.
as an example.
Right.
Right.
So Neptune was such a strong identity for Virginia Beach. Do you see that with this statue, or have you seen that with other works?
Well, there is the Statue of Liberty. I like that one. Pops into my mind. The David in Florence, Italy. The city of Florence likes it so much they have a copy of it, not less than half a mile away. The same figure, it's just a copy in front of the city hall. A lot of times sculptures come together in kind of a, like two rivers coming together. And because I just turned 73, I can't think of the word for that. Confluence of circumstance. It's a confluence of circumstance. And Neptune it was just a no-brainer that, to me. And because I'm used to I like working big. I didn't take up more of your time showing you another sculpture of a Native American that I built in the capital of America in 1983, when there were no statues to Native Americans in Washington, D.C. But that statue was fiberglass, came apart in 6 pieces, and was 23 feet between elbows on the roof, and it was a rooftop sculpture, holding onto the parapet of a roof. Why am I telling you that? Well, because I was used to working big. I knew I could do a big Neptune. And I won that competition because everybody else did one. They asked for a 15-foot statue of Neptune. Okay, a 15-foot statue's twice life size, which is big, but my statue is 15 feet from the waist up. And it just, I knew that it would be a landmark. So it was, I put all efforts into that and fell in love with it. And same with the Arthur Ashe Monument, same with this project. You fall in love with it pretty much because there's a truth behind it. For me, the truth behind Neptune was guardian of our seas. It had a message. And as far as the tourism goes, yeah, they love Neptune. And it has over 2.5 million, it's estimated that 2.5 million photographs taken a year of Neptune. Of course, they don't know that they're supposed to give a penny to the artist, right? That didn't get communicated. Lost that memo.
Sorry, Mr. Howland, you're good. You can go now.
Sorry. This is a history question for Dr. Quigley. In this time period of the Civil War, how far reaching is Franklin County from its current borders? How far did Franklin County extend?
Actually, I have to confess I do not know. I would need to look that up. I don't know if you have any ideas about the borders. Yeah, I'm not aware that they have changed very much since the 1860s, but it's possible. I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
I've got one more question. I think at the beginning of your presentation, one of the words was conflict, is that right? Or a controversy. And I think of the statue Rumor of War in Richmond. Every time I see it, I cry. There's no way I can not. It has such an impact. Is that the kind of monument that you think will work in our town? Something that is controversial, that evokes emotion, but that can be embraced by everybody.
And there's a difference there. So Rumors of War, just for people who might not know about that, was done by the artist Kehinde Wiley. Mr. Wiley did the portrait of President Obama, the presidential portrait, hangs in the White House. He came to Richmond, Virginia. He saw Monument Avenue as it was, and as a black man, was moved by these monuments that were celebrating generals of the Civil War. And of course that brings up, well, why was there a Civil War? Was it states' rights or was it about slavery? And I would bet $100 right now that Dr. Quigley is going to tell you it was about slavery. Let's see.
Yes.
Was I betting you? Or was I... So states' rights was an issue, but it wasn't why it was fought. But Mr. Wiley saw these sculptures, and he got the idea that he could do one with and change out the general and comment make a social comment about who we celebrate, I think. So this is now me speaking for the artist, but it's what I see as an artist. So what he did is he scanned the horse and printed that out at full scale, put it on a similar base, and then he scanned his model, who was a same stature, same physical property as Jeb Stuart, General Jeb Stuart, and put him on the horse. Put his man on the horse, looking backward with a hip haircut in what could only be described as hip street garb, right? And sneakers. And because it was, he was able to use the technology of the time to make that sculpture and cast it in bronze. And so now it ended up being given to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. It sits in front of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, not far from my 7-foot statue of Neptune, I might add. Sorry, just a little plug. What I would have liked to have seen would be the statue of Jeb Stuart on the ground near that statue to resonate with the artist's intent and give people more to think about. But it's not possible because the building next door is owned by the Daughters of the Confederacy. Of course, that would really be an embrace if they could do that. It's still possible. I'm an optimist. I don't know that you really had a question. Oh, controversy. Well, I was at the unveiling of the statue, and I would say it was well received. It's appreciated. Yeah.
I have a question that my question is, are you going to put a Confederate flag around the statue? Because there's 3 Confederate flags.
That's something I had never thought about until the moment you asked that. And there's a lot I haven't thought about, and a lot Rick hasn't thought about. We've been musing over this. Oh, where's Mr. Muse? We've been thinking about this a lot. The Confederate flag was the flag of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
But
it doesn't represent. It doesn't represent.
No, it doesn't.
The South.
That's why I'm asking, because to me it really doesn't represent the part of the South.
We're talking
For
4.5 years
of African Americans.
That's not the Southern history.
Right.
So, but that's the kind of question that might come before the Monument Committee, to discuss.
Okay, is the Monument Committee is going to be the one to decide what it's going to, the final say?
Well, the Monument Committee has to come up with we've got 70 names that have to be included, mm-hmm. and then there's verbiage that describes who these people were. That'll also be on the statue. Flags are kind of, if the flag is in bronze, it's permanent. If the flag is flying on a pole, it's not. It's like flowers. Somebody has to take care of them, mm-hmm. and somebody has to take care of the flag. But I think that that's exactly what we need to happen tonight, is to hear. It's really, you're raising a question, but it's also a suggestion to be considered. So I think you need to make sure you step forward and ask the committee
I will.
and have a dialogue about that. Because I think you know more than you're letting on right now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one.
We got another one back here.
We could take a moment, by the way, if there's people who need to leave for some reason, please feel free to do that. It's not, people have other constraints that they got to meet. Okay, there's another.
Okay, I don't have a question. I simply wanted to make a statement in regard to the tourism perspective, as we've discussed that, or as that has come up in this, amongst this group. Franklin County still has the Confederate statue, and with the addition, all right, of the statue that is honoring the colored troops, whether it's our town officials, county officials, public school officials, or other individuals, we can sort of embrace or show Franklin County as a place that has a diverse past, and we are celebrating both of those diverse, very different pasts with these two statues.
That's exactly right, and that's exactly the capital I'm talking about. And what's interesting about that, what's interesting to me about that is during the shift of that question, should Arthur Ashe go on Monument Avenue? Why shouldn't Arthur Ashe go on Monument Avenue? That changed people's minds. It changed people's minds not because of the question, but because of what they learned about Arthur Ashe. I mean, he's just a tennis player, to, oh, he's won world championship twice. He's written 9 books. It was 8, and then he finished one before he died. In the case of tourism and Rocky Mount, it is claiming the history and embracing it that Dr. Quigley's talking about. Unsung heroes? What was that?
Forgotten.
The forgotten heroes. The forgotten heroes. They weren't so much forgotten as they were overlooked, I think. And this is precious. I mean, it's precious history that other communities cannot claim. So it's, in that sense, it's a gift. It is money under the mattress, in my opinion, as far as, I wasn't thinking in terms of tourism. I was just thinking in terms of proud to be a Rocky Mount resident, which I know you all are. Yeah, shows. How we doing? Everybody's worn out? One more.
This is really not, go ahead. This is really not a question. What you're talking about, the capital involved, it's, we embrace it, it's ours, correct? Statute, the history. Okay. To my knowledge, this things have changed over the last 10 years or so. Like I said, this is just a comment of mine. But I'm only aware of one statue of Barack Obama unless things have changed. And I saw it in Puerto Rico in front of the State House. I don't know, that's just something to think about, for everybody in here to think about. I mean, that should be embraced. Our first black president, who did so many things for this country. I don't know, it's just a comment.
Well, I think it's exactly correct, and I also think that's why Rick is here, and that's why I'm here, because we are going to give you a statue you're proud of as far as statues go. And where it goes and how it's appreciated has a lot to do with decisions that are made in the next weeks and months, weeks, I hope, as to location. So that's really up to everybody here. And if there's resistance to putting it in a prominent location, then the leadership of the city needs to reflect the sentiment of the community.
Okay, I had a question. If, maybe more of a suggestion, but as I think of the 70 men who went off to fight, I'm assuming they were not able to get out of Franklin County and join the Northern Army with their families. Is there some way to recognize the wives and children that had to wait back here in this monument? And I don't know, I don't have a suggestion as to what that could be, but it seems like that would be a powerful component to any piece that you do.
I'm going to try to turn this over to Dr. Quigley, because I know that the women and children of the husbands who fought in the Civil War were left destitute in many cases. And I believe I've seen small sculptures to raise money for those people, for the men, the women and children. And I can't recall the organization, and it was done, 120 years ago. But do you have information about that, or can you speak to that?
Not about that particular thing, but I think it's a wonderful suggestion to think about the lives that were affected by men's decisions to go off and fight. And Ms. Glenamore may be the one to answer the individual 70 soldiers and the one sailor, what their family situation was. Across the South in general, the situation varied quite a lot. Sometimes whole families were able to escape enslavement and make it to refugee camps. So one of the things I didn't mention in my talk but could have is the fact that there were these 500,000 refugees from slavery, men, women, and children, and many of them ended up in camps, some of them in Virginia, but all across the country, trying to make things work, trying to figure out their next steps. And so sometimes the women and children of the men off fighting would be left in those camps. Some of them would be left back home in places like Franklin County. But for sure, I think it would be a very worthwhile effort to try and include their experiences somehow. You can't do everything with one figure, but somehow to recognize that.
We got time for one more question.
We talked about the size of the memorial and that it would be a memorial. We've heard location several times. A few weeks ago, it was announced that the location would be at the Veterans Memorial Park down on South Main. Today, I want to ask, is that still going to be the same location, or has that been decided otherwise?
There are not enough people up here to answer that question, I don't think, at this time. I think there are two sites that were looked at, that we were asked to look at today. One of them was Memorial Park, and one of them was next to the clock at the corner up just a few blocks from here. The memorial was carefully planned and is beautiful, the Memorial Park. And without careful further study, I'm hard pressed to think how you would place an additional sculpture there, particularly one of a statue, without taking away either one of two things, either taking away from the memorial that's there, which is more conceptual. I mean, it's got an eagle on top of it, but it's more of a it's a memorial in the sense of more like a gravestone is a memorial. But, so it either would, a statue would take away from that, would distract from that, look more important than that, perhaps. But most likely it would look like an add-on and to that design. That's my feeling about it. So it could be done, but if you look at the clock, you're going to force me to show you another slide, I think. So Rick took this picture of me looking statuesque. This is rounding the corner in this little alcove that looks like it was made for a statue, frankly. So I put that in my slides today. I didn't know if I would have an opportunity to show it or not. But anytime I get to look statuesque, I want to do that. No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be joking about it. That is a beautiful sight for the statue. The clock, I don't know how long the clock's been there, but I don't think it's going to last forever. The statue would. Yeah, and statues do get moved around. Somebody I was talking to in the mingling part of tonight, and they do get moved. But why put it someplace and then move it to a better place later when you can own it in the best place right now? That's how I feel about that. But I don't know that I'm on the voting committee. I'm sure I'm not. Okay, Mr. Muse, it's up to you.
All right, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think you need to come up and see everybody out there, man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone for coming out tonight and participating. We also like to thank our guests who are here tonight: Paul Quigley, Paul DePasquale, Rick Weaver, Patrick Lindsay, and Devon Henry for their offering their expertise tonight. We would also like to thank the mayor and the Rocky Mount Town Council for their support of this project as well. So give them a round of applause. And last but not least, if you don't have your paper copy of the survey, please scan the QR code and complete that survey soon. All right? And then remember, we have the posters outside with the Post-it notes to answer those questions, so make sure you do that. And you also may return those surveys at the designated box as well. And on behalf of the Raising the Shade Franklin County 1850 to 1910, the NAACP, and myself, thank you for your presence and input, and you all have a great evening. Thank you. Excuse me, hold on, we have a show.
It's gonna pop up on the screen. Please make sure that.
Oh, this is the QR code that will pop up on the screen. So if you get your phones out, you can scan the QR code and take care of the survey. Or any of your electronic devices.